When you work with JSON files, you probably ultimately want to bring in that JSON data from an external file. So I've created a file called data.json. Essentially, I've just copied and pasted that initial JSON data in. So I'm going to open up the browser. So instead of it being minified, I just save it as a JSON file, and I've got all of that JSON data output. So this is again that same content from the JSON generator, so I can even generate something else if I want, open it up the file and paste it in there. So now I've got data JSON, and there's also another thing here that's really useful, and this is called JSON lint, and that gives us the ability to make sure that our JSON file and our JSON data is valid JSON formatted. So you just copy and paste it in, and there's another really good resource over here where we have the ability to create JSON repos online. So I could just simply post some JSON data in there, save it, and it gives me a URL, which then I can take and I can output in the browser, and I can see I've got access to all this JSON data. So this is all really useful, and this gives us the ability, so the same way that we're going to be pulling in our data.json file into our JavaScript, and essentially the same way that we looked at it in the previous lesson where we turned our JSON data into a useful JavaScript object that we could then use within our code, we're going to do the same thing with these external JSON files. And in order to do that, we need to implement AJAX. And AJAX is a way to access other files and pull them into your JavaScript without actually doing a page reload. Essentially, what we can do is we can access this JSON file and make it seamless and output that content within our index file, index.html. So let's begin, and the first thing that we want to do is start by creating our object, our request object. So we need to set a variable to that, so I'm going to just set a, and we're setting up a brand new, it's an XML HTTP request, and essentially this is a JavaScript object, and it gives us the ability to make these HTTP requests right within our JavaScript. And this is an object or a method here, so we're just going to use those brackets, those rounded brackets. So that's the first thing that we want to do. The next thing, now that we've created this object that's going to contain our XML HTTP request, so let's just take a quick look at what this looks like within the console log. So now when we open up our web page, we can see within the console we've got all of this information for that newly created object. So all we had to do is just create that new object, and we've got some information here. So we've got abort, error, load, load end, start, on ready state, response text, a whole bunch of really useful stuff. And we're going to be using this within our code here now. So the first thing that we want to do is we actually want to open up our connection. So that's not listed here, but the way that we open up our connection is we do our object name and we do open. And for this connection, I just want to get some data. And then next, we need to specify where we're getting that data from. So as I said, I've created a brand new file, data.json. So I'm just going to simply connect to that data.json file and pull in the contents of that file. So make that connection. And then we're just going to set this to true and save that. So when I refresh it, we're going to see that nothing has changed here. But we do see that ready state now is 1, which is really interesting because now there's been a change with the ready state because we've opened up our connection. So the next thing that we want to do is we actually want to initiate send. So send is another built-in method within this object, and now when we initiate send, we see that our ready state is actually changed to 4, our status is 200, And what status 200 means is that we were actually able to make a connection to this JSON file. We successfully connected to it, and we've got our response text here, so we can see all of this text that's coming back. We see all of that information from that JSON file. So this is initially what we want to do when we initiate our connection, and this is our basics of our AJAX call. In the next lesson, we're going to build this out in a little bit more detail, and we're going to actually check to make sure that we're okay and that we've made our connection before we try to do anything with this data. And we're going to essentially do the same thing that we did in the earlier lesson, where we're going to pull this through as a string, parse it into a JSON object, and then use it within our JavaScript. So all of that is coming up in the next set of lessons.